the harvest hasn't even occurred yet. So it's really cool. This is like a long-term project. And I think if somebody was going to mimic something like this, it's important they commit. It's like buying a puppy, it's fun the first year or two, but you really got to stick through the tough times. If you want to make a difference, you got to commit.
Welcome to Voices from the Field podcast. My name is Gabriella Soto-Velez, and I'm a sustainable agriculture specialist here at NCAT. In this episode, we're exploring a regenerative farming method that's transforming landscapes and livelihoods, Syntropic Agriculture. I'm joined by Roger Gietzen, founder of the Global Freedom Project working in Haiti, and Mauro Rosito-Weber, a Brazilian agronomist and educator with deep roots in syntropic systems. Together, they share how this unique agroforestry approach draws from natural succession to restore degraded soils, increase biodiversity, and produce food in harmony with the land. We talk about how syntropic agriculture differs from other regenerative methods, the challenges and rewards of implementation, and how farmers, whether in the tropics or beyond, can begin incorporating these principles on their own farms. Let's get into it. So before we dive in too much into the nitty-gritty of syntropic, I'd love to hear from you, Mauro. How did you get introduced into syntropic agriculture? What's your background?
So I'm from South Brazil, from Porto Alegre, and I have a family farm where my father and my grandfather were farming. And then in the beginning, I was not too much involved in the farm, and then I went through another path. Eventually, I came back to the farm, and there was some parts that my father was not using anymore. So I started farming there a little bit over 10 years ago. And I started doing basically market gardening, vegetables and some fruits that we already have at the farm, and doing certified organic grow there, and doing farmers market. We started a little CSA program. But then I started realizing that, of course, the land wasn't being used for a while, so I was having good results. But then very early, I started noticing that I had to keep bringing more and more inputs, and the results would be like the same, but not all, sometimes even not as good as in the beginning. And then I started to ask myself, okay, where this is going in terms of being a sustainable organism that is able to produce what is needed. Then I start looking for alternative answers. Then I learned about syntropic agriculture and start doing courses, learning about it, start researching about Ernest Gut, who is the farmer who started the syntropic agriculture. And then from there, I start applying on my farm and start working from there. So since then, I switched my farm to syntropic agricultural systems, and then I start working on other projects abroad. Then I met Roger, and then we started working together in Haiti, in the Dominican Republic, and then in other countries in Latin America.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Speaking of Roger, I'd love to know how you got involved and how you guys became this dynamic duo.
Sure. So I guess I would start. I'm a doctor and had a strong interest in humanitarian work and wanted to go where things were worst and I could somehow help. And so back in 2015, I started going to Haiti, initially as a professor teaching neurology to Haitian doctors. But I've had a long love of gardening, and after hours and on weekends, I spent a lot of time in the community, and I really felt like a lot of the medical problems we were treating were preventable, and it wasn't a lack of medicines and surgeries. It was a lack of nutrition, a lack of a healthy ecosystem, a lack of clean water, and a lack of care for the environment. And it prompted me to start backyard gardens and little composting programs. And I observed in Haiti that the mountains were all bare and degraded, and trees were missing. I mean, trees to me are always important for managing my stress. I like to go for a walk in the forest, and here I am working in one of the most stressful environments I'd ever been in my life, and there was like nowhere to go. And so that's kind of the context I was in. That time, it was about that time I saw a video in 2016 called Life in Syntropy, which a lot of people have probably know about that summarized Ernst's work and showed some of the results in Brazil. When I saw the work that he had done on his farm and how he was able to regenerate a large area of degraded farmland using hand tools and a group of guys in a pickup truck with seeds that he collected locally, I thought, okay, this is something we could use in Haiti. This would work. And so I started searching, looking for consultants. I thought it was going to be a simple translate some educational materials and start a program. It turned out to be a little more complicated. And long story short, eventually I met Mauro in Paraguay, another Brazilian consultant who really given the program a boost. And it's been really wonderful to watch how things are evolving, and we're attracting team and positive energy and creating demo farms and inspiring locals in Haiti to care for the land in a little more holistic way. And then get to see the delayed results that we hope will help address poverty and food insecurity in the country.
Awesome. Thank you so much for explaining that. So we're talking about Syntropic Ag today, and I've seen it popping off a little bit more, and I think it's becoming a little bit of a buzzword. And I think that would be really great if you guys, since you're the experts, could really break down what is Syntropic agriculture and how does that differ from permaculture, or how does it relate to agroforestry?
So maybe I can start saying that syntropic agriculture is a farming technique that use natural process, observing nature, to grow crops efficient. But basically, we aim to work with natural process and not focus too much on external inputs. So, and with that, we have a dynamic in the system that help our crops, our target crops, to grow in different climates, different ecosystems. Basically, we are trying to mimic the original ecosystems of the place we are doing our intervention, and bringing them or translating them into an agricultural system that fits our purpose.
And if you want, I'll add that you asked, how does it relate to permaculture? And I think in many places now it is permaculture, or it is in harmony with permaculture principles. And a lot of people who have learned it, have adapted it into the work they do. It's different than the traditional permaculture food forest in a couple ways. From what I understand, it's typically more structured way. So there's often repeating patterns used to make it more efficient to manage and harvest from the system. It's typically more labor than was traditionally envisioned with a permaculture food forest. But then the reward is also more harvests, larger crop hauls from the system. And a lot of the labor has to do with heavy pruning and understanding natural succession. I've heard some people say a food forest is like a photo, and people let their system kind of grow and then stay in a particular way, whereas syntropic is more like a video. And you're more aware that a forest is always changing, and then you're accelerating natural processes, especially natural succession, to result in more fertile soil and larger harvests for the farmer.
So in the context of Haiti, can you maybe explain a little bit more on the challenges that are faced there? I know that you touched on the lack of trees and the lack of proper nutrition. So given the terrain, the topography, the political climate, how does Syntropic fit into that system? And how has it transformed the agriculture in Haiti?
There's multiple challenges, and there's cultural challenges. So many people in Haiti want a Western lifestyle. They want to go get their food from the grocery store. They want a good paying job. They want to have a more comfortable lifestyle. And we're not providing that. We're providing a way to be more sustainable and grow your own food, which requires more effort. But then the reward is more security in life. So that was one challenge I had. And Haiti is solving that problem for me, because since I started working there in 2015, every year the civil situation is deteriorating more and more. And the ability to have gas and get your farm products to the city, the ability to get food from the port, the ability to have enough money to buy imported food, which is about 80% of what they consume. That's getting harder and harder and harder. And patients can go weeks without any gas at the gas station. So that has automatically created a change in attitude where people are like, maybe the way grandpa and grandma were living with eating mangoes and breadfruit actually was a pretty good idea. And is there something we can do different to make that more doable? So there's that aspect. And in the past, farming was a very challenging and still is challenging lifestyle. And so most farmers wanted their kids to go do something else. And so there was like a loss of this value of farming. But that also is kind of changing because the life in the cities is very toxic in Haiti. And even though they have a little bit more money, they have addiction problems, they have poverty there, they have violence. And there is a worldwide movement towards homesteading and excitement in the youth about farming and growing your own food. That's actually also palpable in the youth of Haiti. So we have that kind of helping us too. So those, I think, are some of the big challenges specific to Haiti. There's a lot of things in our favor, though. It's a tropical country with still some good fertile soil that's volcanic based. There's tons of different species that are present there that we can use. We can use seeds that are local. It's just they don't have a culture of collecting them. So we create this movement with the kids where we start to notice these trees and those trees, and hey, let's keep the seeds that are in this citrus that we're eating, or this cortisol, or so a lot of it is we love what we're doing, and by going there and just doing what we love, it kind of rubs off onto the people who join us, and I think that's helping solve some of those problems. Those I think are the most specific ones to Haiti.
If I can add something, I think what is interesting there is, as Roger was mentioning, because of the social and political situation, there is almost non-agricultural inputs also available. It's very difficult to get any kind of material. Even basic tools can be a challenging there. And with syntropic agriculture and this approach of using natural process and the resources available to bring to reverse degradation and to improve soil conditions and to start getting crops early on the process, it also becomes an attractive option for farmers. And then we've been gaining their trust, and as we start to have more farmers practicing and achieving results, and they see these processes going on, and the soil improving, the crops, things changing. So I think that also has been something that has been good.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing that, guys. I am trying to work a lot in the U.S. territories, and it seems like a similar problem, just on a different scale in regards to the amount of imported foods and the lack of being able to import different inputs for the farm. I'd love to learn a little bit more about how are you creating inputs for the farm? Is that through chopping and dropping, or what does that look like in the context of Haiti?
So what we do, we design systems. So basically, okay, we assess what is the situation, and then we design systems that can produce their own needs. So basically, let's say we are planning like a coffee plantation, and then what we try to combine space and time. So basically, some of the principles and language we use in syntropic agriculture would be the stratification, which would be the layers, and natural succession would be the time of where that system will be working. So by using this knowledge in this natural process and things that are observed in forests, we can produce like at different times. So let's say we want coffee, and what can we plant with the coffee to have like a more biodiversity and more income? Maybe we can add some mango on top of that. Good. Okay, but that mango and that coffee maybe we will start producing in 2, 3, 4 years to be in effective production. Okay, before that, what can we plant together with the coffee? Maybe some corn, some yucca, depending on what's available local. But we try to design a plan where the farmer can have income throughout the time until he reach that target crop that might come later, more into an agroforestry system style. And then also throughout the time, we plan, okay, how can we plant other species that will be supporting our main crops throughout all the time the system will be working, that will provide for the needs of these plants in terms of organic matter. And more important than organic matter, when we talk about pruning and adding organic material, is the information that all this pruning will be giving to the whole system. Because once we start pruning heavily the system, there will be more photosynthesis happening, so more energy, more dynamic. So that fuels the whole system, rejuvenates it also, and makes with that the plants, our coffee or our mango that are still growing, they receive this pulse or this growth information through the management. Exactly.
And maybe I could add the question you ask, how do you get inputs in? It tells me you're sharing the mindset that has been taught in soil science for years, which is basically that the soil needs constant input, which is only true if we farm in a way that is extractive. But if we look at nature, nature doesn't need inputs. And we know our ancestral farmers knew when the land was doing poorly just to let it rest. In doing so, forest would grow and they could come back years later and the soil fertility is restored. Now there's new science that helps us understand why that happens. But basically, a forest is able to create fertility out of thin air. There's carbon dioxide and nitrogen in the air. We now know there's tons of nutrients, even in arid, degraded soil situations that are just not plant available in the soil. And what's needed to unlock all these resources that are basically even in poor soil situations is nutrient cycling. And the key to that is soil life, soil microbiology. So syntropic farming aims to mimic a natural farm. And not only that, like maximize the amount of plants and the speed at which natural succession would occur so that it creates a great environment for this nutrient cycling and the soil food web to just be thriving. The short answer is we don't add any inputs. We just transform the resources that are there and create fertility out of thin air. And then everything else Mauro is saying is true. We use that leverage to create fertility and then create a rolling harvest. So even if we're growing trees as our primary crop, the farmer has short-term inputs and incomes coming.
Thanks, guys. That was a really thorough explanation. And that sounds really exciting, the work that you're doing out there. I'm wondering, how has it been having the farmers adopt these practices? Has it been challenging? I know that you were speaking, Mauro, about the way that you crop or plant the crops so that you have a harvest from the beginning of the system and it only intensifies as the system matures. But how has the adoption been amongst farmers?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I guess I would say is we know that changing the culture of farming is very challenging. And we don't expect to go in there with a fancy set of PowerPoint slides and get large adoption right off the bat. Our goal, we kept our expectations low in the beginning, and our goal was just to get a couple guys who are willing to risk it, and even just one person after each workshop who was willing to apply that what we taught was enough. And so our initial plan was just to get a couple early adopters who would make a demonstration farm. And then our hopes at the end of 3, 4, and 5 years that those people can help then create a movement in their individual communities. There's been a lot of challenges. There's been a lot of people who start and then stop. there is this culture that prefers bare ground, and they consider that a clean garden, and Syntropic looks messy. But despite the challenges, we've achieved exactly what I described we hoped for. We have now demonstration systems in basically every region of Haiti. We have at least a couple Haitian farmers behind each of those systems who's very passionate. And our goal is ultimately to have more and more farmers who are independent of a international organization, because those are the ones who are going to be most convincing to the local farmers. There's no excuse for your neighbors to say they can't do it if they're looking at somebody who's doing it on their own and they know they're not getting a paycheck every month, you know.
And if I can add something, I think it's a reality all over the world, like back home in Haiti and all countries we've been working, that you can expect people to adopt based on just like a presentation, as Roger said, and especially in agriculture, has been always been these waves of miracle solutions. Oh, now is this crop is going to save all farmers. Oh no, is this crop, and then a couple of years later, oh, another crop that maybe some extension agencies come promoting or companies. So farmers have been through these cycles and they are a bit
skeptical.
That's it about it. So basically, it's true example. So we aim to work with them when we are teaching in practice, plan with them, show them, and then wherever we go, we always try to keep these places so people can see the change through time. And then things start to happen, and then maybe 1, 2, or 3 farmers will get curious, will try, and then others will see. But there is no magic solution. We have to do it, show it that it works, and then people get curious, and then things start to happen.
And I'll add one thing. I think we're in year 4 now of our work together as a team. And I really feel like this is the year where I'm seeing like the most excitement coming from the guys we're working with in Haiti. And we're seeing the most neighbors doing it. And I can remember I asked why this last trip to the couple Haitians, what do they find attractive about this? And it was basically 2 things. One is what Mauro stated, that there's always something ready to be harvested in the garden. You know, they finish harvesting one thing, they can see the next crop's coming soon. And then the second thing is that's really exciting is they see all these trees. They have mango trees and avocados, and they're not producing fruit because we're in year 4 and we've started most of these by direct planting of seed, but they're established now. The trees are kind of past that initial, they've made it through a bunch of dry seasons. They're up above the grass. They're kind of not in this vulnerable state. And so these Haitians know these trees are rooted, and as long as they take care of their property and keep the cows out, that they're going to have a ton of fruits. And now they're starting to dream, like, what am I going to do with all this mango, with all this avocado? And it's creating this excitement, even though the harvest hasn't even occurred yet. So it's really cool. This is like a long-term project. And I think if somebody was going to mimic something like this, it's important they commit. You know, it's like buying a puppy, you know, it's fun the first year or 2, but you really got to stick through the tough times. If you want to make a difference, you got to commit.
Yeah, totally. I think that's been a big challenge in a lot of the farmers that I've spoken with, whether that's agroforestry, permaculture, or syntropic, the initial workload and then the length of time until your first fruit harvest has been one of the things that they're most skeptical or nervous about in regards to the adoption of these principles. I'm wondering, I remember when we were at ECHO that you showed an aerial view of the islands, and there was a clear separation between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, with the Dominican Republic being very green and lush in comparison to Haiti. And I know that Haiti, because of massive deforestation during the colonial period, does suffer from really severe droughts. And how do these systems perform in those intense drought periods?
So basically we try to create systems together with the farmers that we always have a lot of photosynthesis happening and dynamic happening. So before the dry season, we plant very dense, and we cover all the area with the crops that we want or other support species that can be grass, can be shrubs, can be fast growing trees that we keep the system sort of the dynamic through the management. So basically we keep pruning it. So let's say before the last rains, we prune the system. So it has still time to receive some water, and then it starts to grow back. Let's say the grass. We are planting grass to have material to cover the soil throughout the rainy season. So we do that. We keep the soil cover, and then before the last rain, we do our last pruning. So what that makes with the plants keep their metabolism active throughout the dry season. They respond much better because they were not close to completing their cycle. So let's say you have a grass growing through the whole dry wet season, and by the time it's arriving the dry season, that grass is completing its seeding cycle. So it tends to dry, to oxidize, and to you have that appearance of now dry and dead grass that will come back with the rain. But no, with the constant management, we keep this metabolism alive. So it goes into the dry season and it's able to respond much better and keeps more green, keeps more alive, of course, depending on the situation. And the soil we keep the soil covered at all times. So we plan to have enough support species that we will be able to do that. So we have several throughout the years we've been coming back. We can see the difference where we have been managing and the areas that we haven't been doing. And I can say the same about here in Ecuador. I'm in Ecuador at the moment in a project, and it just started the rainy season, and we are start to planting. But the systems here, we could see that they were the same case. They were responding much better. We had a very severe dry season, but you see that all the trees and grasses and support species, they respond much better.
I mean, I'm going to just say, like, for somebody not familiar with Syntropic, it's amazing what you can achieve. I mean, that's, I think, one of the biggest strengths is its ability to resist drought. And the first example that comes to my mind is the Beehive, which is a organization that we work with and we've done a lot of our conferences at. And we use no irrigation there for our system. And we do have to plant based on the rain cycle. So they have rain from like May to November, and then a pretty serious dry season after that. But we have successfully started our systems. We start planting them at the beginning of rainy season and successfully cultivated trees into the next dry season. We sometimes do lose some trees, but we plant more than we need. And what really comes to my mind is this last dry season was super intense. And when we showed up there in May, it was the brownest and driest everywhere around there I've ever seen. It looked like everything was dead, and the systems were definitely stressed. But it started raining when we got there, and within a few weeks, the agroforestry systems were just booming green again. And there were bananas that had made it through, and papayas, and the trees bounced right back, and the grass was green. So these systems speak for themselves, and farmers who are used to just practicing conventional farming wouldn't even imagine that you would have green that far into dry season and everything just jumping back. So it outperforms what most people expect. But like Mauro was saying, you have to actually manage it, though. These systems aren't passive. And it makes a big difference whether you come in and prune right before the dry season versus you don't. You need to put the work in to get the work out.
Yeah, definitely. And I can only imagine that these systems will gain popularity when we're considering climate change and how things are becoming more unpredictable. We're having earlier dry seasons, or I'm in Mexico and right now it should be the dry season and it's the rainy season, and it's really damaging the crop production because what people are expecting in regards to planting times, or the grains should be dry and now they're wet and molding over. So a system that's resilient, like you're speaking of, I think would be really beneficial, especially in the more global South area. So Mauro, I know that before we had this meeting right now, we were speaking a little bit about some projects that I'm planning to create, and it's about incorporating livestock into these syntropic agriculture systems. And I'm wondering, how does that look like for farmers in Haiti? Are they able to graze their animals in the system, or are they doing cut and carry, or is it a mix of both? How does that look over there?
I think from the areas we've been working, none of the farmers has designed a system to include the animals there, right, Roger? I mean,
True.
some people they maybe some people. Well, I mean, sometimes we plant the grass to feed the trees, to mulch and things. And the grass looks so good and so green that they go there, cut the grass, and bring to the animals.
Yeah.
But
we have one
yes.
system we planned, George. We planned a system that was silvopasture, but that person had some unexpected problems come up in life. Let's say it like that, and so that project was stalled at that location. Yeah, I can't think of. Then Brian Beachy has like a chicken tractor that he runs through his system, and a pig, but we don't have. And then Tyler has a cow silvopasture system, which is in the nursery stages. It's still a little too young for him to bring in the animals.
Yeah, there we don't have, but like in the Dominican Republic, we have a friend that then he is doing that. He has a lemon orchard, and then he bought an old lemon orchard, and then he integrated principles of syntropic agriculture, bringing more biodiversity, more species, planting the area in between the lemons with Mombasa grass, which is a grass that we use a lot because of its characteristics and the performance. And then his name is Zach. And then he started to, first he was cutting the grass and putting to the trees, and then he started integrated. He works with cows and sheep there. Then he started integrating the animals in those areas. So basically, that's to say that syntropic agriculture is based on principles. So once the farmer or whoever is practicing understand those principles, they can be applied in any ecosystems. It's like a tropical, subtropical, temperate, any ecosystems, and to any purpose. So either it's for like fruits, for like cereals, for livestock. So we can design systems for that, and it has been done, and we have this friend doing that at the Dominican Republic, and there are other examples in different areas. So it can be done. It's just basically designing and adapting these systems, these principles into what's our main focus.
I would just add, right now we're at the whim of the people we work with, because our team travels twice a year right now. So there'd be no way for our own systems to integrate animals, because we're just not there. You have to be there every day, And so it depends on the farmers we're working with, or the organizations we're working with, what resources they have, how they want to use it. And then we just adapt to meet their needs. And so that's what we have to show, is depending on what the needs are of the people we're helping.
Yeah, totally. And that's really neat what you said, Mauro, about the lemon orchard and how you can take something that's already existing and almost retrofit it into a syntropic system as well. I think that that's really useful, because I feel like sometimes even when I think about creating a system, I think I need to start with barren land or something like that. But to think that you could integrate it into a system that's already existing, as long as you have these principles like you've spoken of, that you can still achieve that biodiversity and that high output as well. I think that's a really good thing to note.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we can do that. Sometimes it can be like a big challenge because it's like, for instance, you have in his case, he had a lemon orchard that was suffering from a lot of disease. It was not productive. So we are trying to like we get a patient in critical condition, and we are trying to okay, let's change it. So that might take a while until you start seeing the changes and to reverse all that. Whereas if you take a place and start from zero, you can from day one do the planning and introduce all the species you need. So, but there is absolutely no need. If you have an area, you can integrate that, and that happens a lot. And we have other cases of farmers we work with that have cacao, that are cacao farmers, and some they've been doing cacao in full sun. They're not using shade, and they've been suffering from different challenges. So we've been also introducing more biodiversity on those systems to one to protect the soil, to support species, to add dynamic and organic matter to the system, and in the cacao specifically also to add the shade.
So we're speaking a lot about tropical crops, Mombasa grass and cacao or bananas, but a lot of our audience here within the ATTRA program is in North America and more temperate climates. Is it possible to do a syntropic system in a colder climate? And how would that look like? How does the management differ?
How about I answer that? Because I live in Michigan, and I've been planting systems for the last 2 years in my region, which is a fruit growing region in the area. So this is used to be like the cherry capital of the world. Where I live, we have apples, pears, plums, peaches, raspberries, blueberries. So you just integrate different species into the system using the same principles. So you're trying to maximize solar capture. You're trying to fit all the niches of life cycles moving forward. And then you're managing systems in a way to speed up the natural processes, just like we do in the tropics. And it's totally doable. There's some differences. In some ways, it's less management because winter is a big prune or a big manage. It automatically causes the trees to drop most of their leaves. It causes them to go into a pause. And then with spring, there's this massive growth pulse. It's similar to what we create with a pruning. So there are differences. I think maybe it'd be a lot to go into how we manage it a little different right now. But I can tell you there's systems in the US, in Montana, New York, Michigan, and almost every country in the EU has systems. They're a few years ahead of us because Ernst was traveling there, the man who originated this way of farming. And I was just in Denmark a few weeks ago managing a small system there. Very cold climate, totally doable.
Thanks, Roger, for explaining that. I think that that's really exciting for our more northern audience to know that they can still implement a system like this despite the cold and the downtime within the northern region.
Maybe I'll add one thing, which is we're trying to create a platform for sharing because there's not a lot of information in the temperate climate. And so people who wanted to learn more, there's a Facebook page called Temperate Syntropic Community. And if you go there, you can communicate with us. There's a WhatsApp group for practitioners. So if people find me and give me their phone number and have WhatsApp app, we can add you to the group. And then there's also 3 times a year video call where we're creating like a little summit where we'll have 1 or 2 people who've been practicing this present their experience on their farm. Other people will watch and ask questions. And then I'm recording those and putting them on my YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel. I think it's just my name, Roger Gietzen, and just doing what we can to share. On the Facebook page, there's a file section which has some documents, list of species, some designs people use. So we're little by little trying to create a community of sharing to help people accelerate applying this practice.
That's awesome. You're going to take my job because you're already one step ahead of me. And I was going to ask if you had anything to plug. So I'll make sure to put that information into the podcast show notes.
Awesome.
But I wanted to know what workshops do you have that are coming up? Where can people get a hold of you or learn more about you or contact you for a consultation?
So Mauro and I, our next workshop together is going to be at the Echo Farm in Fort Myers, and that dates are July 15th through the 18th. And that will be a comprehensive introductory session where we teach theory and practice, and we'll go out and plant a system, and we'll be able to manage a system that we planted about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, I think is when I first planted that.
That's awesome. You sound really busy, and I'm excited because I will see you in April at Echo, and I attended last time you guys taught, and it was really fun. We got to completely remake a Syntropic system on cleared land, as well as manage the one that you had built the year prior. And it was really good, and that's why I'm here talking to you guys today. What about you, Mauro? What do you have going on?
Yeah, right now I'm in Ecuador. Been doing some work here with really interesting organization called Regenerative Field Institute. The second year I've been coming here, and then apart from that, I have my contacts can be through Instagram or email. I'll give to you, and then we can share in the description.
Nice. Well, thank you guys so much for all of the work that you're doing down in Haiti and also training people as well. It's really valuable. And I think that creating resilient systems that improve people's health and get everybody in nature is a really wonderful thing. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us, Gabriella. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
Of course.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Additional information about this episode and related resources can be found at attra.incat.org. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Voices from the Field wherever you get your podcasts. ATTRA, Voices from the Field, is produced by the National Center for Appropriate Technology, headquartered in Butte, Montana. It's supported by the USDA Rural Business Cooperative Service as part of INCAT's ATTRA Sustainable Agriculture Program. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this recording are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the USDA or INCAT. We'll catch you again next week, and until then, keep on farming.